Her pulse was fading beneath his trembling fingers, the night air thick with smoke and the wreck of her sleek black car still hissing on the roadside. The billionaire heiress lay crumpled, her lips turning blue, her chest rising shallow. The poor driver, who had been dismissed by her family earlier that same day, knelt beside her, his heart pounding louder than the sirens, still too far away. He had no training, no tools, only desperation and the knowledge that if he did nothing, she would be gone. Her eyes fluttered half open, terrified and pleading. He pressed his mouth to hers, giving her the breath she could not find, his hands shaking against her cheeks as life slowly stirred back into her chest. She gasped, coughing against him, her eyes wide, her fingers clinging to his shirt, as if he were the only thing tethering her to the world, when headlights cut across them. More cars arriving, men in suits, spilling out her family, their voices sharp with panic and outrage. But she held on to him, refusing to let go. Her whisper cracked, but clear, "He saved me." The words froze the crowd, the poor driver still kneeling, covered in glass and soot, his chest heaving while the world looked down on him as if he had trespassed into a story not meant for him. And yet, for the first time, the power was not in their wealth, not in their judgment. It was in the girl's trembling hand, gripping his shirt in front of everyone, as if daring them to take her away. That was where it began, the night. A poor driver kissed a billionaire heiress to save her life and set into motion something none of them were ready for. The mansion gates swung open that night with the roar of expensive engines, bodyguards pushing past flashing lights. The heiress, carried inside on a stretcher, but her hand never unclenched from the sleeve of the poor driver who stumbled beside her until the security tore him away. The steel doors slamming behind her, cries for him echoing into silence. He stood outside, bloodied and breathless, glass still clinging to his clothes, the street emptying as luxury cars rolled away, leaving him in the dark like a shadow who was never supposed to be seen. Yet the memory of her lips, gasping against his breath, burned through him, stronger than any bruise. Inside the mansion, doctors rushed to her side, her family's voices rising in anger. More at the scandal than at her brush with death, they whispered of disgrace, of headlines of a poor man's mouth against their daughters. Skin their wealth and pride, rattling louder than gratitude. But the heiress sat up, her voice, fragile but steady, repeating only one thing: find him, the man who saved me. Her father's jaw tightened, her mother's face pale, her brothers scoffing with cruelty. No one wanted to admit that her life now belonged to the poor driver more than to their empire. And far away, the man walked the lonely streets, his hands shoved deep in torn pockets, knowing deep down they would erase his name before the morning came. Yet he also knew a bond had been born in fire and glass, one that no amount of money could bury. The world was about to find out just how far a billionaire heiress would go for the man they called no one. Morning light fell over the city like judgment, and the tabloids screamed with half-truths. Heiress nearly dies in car crash. Unknown man involved, the photos blurred, but her face was clear, pale against the stretcher, her hand outstretched towards someone cropped out in the penthouse. Her father slammed the paper down, his voice booming about shame, about stock prices, about the image of their dynasty. Her mother tried to hush him, but even she whispered that the poor driver had tainted their bloodline. The heiress sat silent until, finally, she spoke. "He saved my life, and I will not forget him." The room went still. Meanwhile, the driver scrubbed grease off his hands in a rundown garage, his friends joking that he'd kissed a princess, while he tightened bolts in silence, but deep. Inside his chest, something grew heavier than any engine he knew. She remembered him, and that terrified him more than being forgotten. That evening, a convoy of black cars rolled into the garage, headlights flooding the oil-stained floormen in tailored suits stepped out demanding his name, and the driver knew the family had found him at last. His palms sweaty, his heart racing, but he refused to bow his head. They threatened him with silence. Money, exile, anything to erase what had happened. But just before they dragged him away, a voice broke through the noise, soft yet commanding. She had come herself, the heiress, stepping out of the car, her hair still loose from the hospital. Her eyes, locked on his, every man around them, froze. The poor driver. And the billionaire heiress stood in that grimy garage, worlds apart, yet bound by one breath shared on a shattered night. The air in the garage tightened as if even the engines themselves were holding their breath. The men in suits stepped back, slightly unsure what to do. When the heiress raised her hand, she walked straight to the driver, ignoring the oil stains on the ground, her silk heels sinking into grime, her eyes steady on his. "You don't bow to them," she whispered. "You look at me." Her voice carried a tremor, but also a kind of steel no one expected from her. She reached for his hand in front of everyone, and for the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't explain. Her touch burned with both gratitude and defiance. Her father's men shouted orders, trying to pull her back, but she didn't flinch. She told them, "This is the man who pulled me from death, and he is under my protection. If you remove him, you'll remove me too." The threat hung sharp in the air. The driver wanted to push her away, tell her not to throw her life into ruin for someone like him, but her grip refused to let go. His silence broke when he finally muttered, "I didn't kiss you for love. I kissed you to save your life." Her lips curved with the faintest smile, and she replied, "Then maybe my life belongs to you now." In the distance, a camera clicked once, twice. Unseen eyes watching the scene from the shadows. The world would soon know that the billionaire heiress and the poor driver had already crossed a line no power could erase. News traveled faster than either of them could imagine. By morning, her face was splashed across every screen, not for her wealth or her fashion, but for the photograph of her holding the poor driver's oil-stained hand. The headlines called it scandal, others called it betrayal, but the picture told the truth of two people who could not step away. Her father's fury was a storm. The board members shouted in glass towers, their empire threatened by a single act of defiance. He demanded the driver be erased from her world, but she answered with a calm that cut deeper than his rage. "If you remove him, father, you remove me too." The driver, meanwhile, sat in his small apartment, curtains drawn, listening to the city roar outside. He wanted to vanish, to free her from the weight of his presence, but her words from the night before echoed in him, louder than any threat. "My life belongs to you now." When black cars rolled up to his block, he braced himself for the worst. But instead the door opened to reveal her stepping out. No guards, no entourage, just her in a simple dress, her eyes locked on him before she spoke softly. "I'm not here for permission, I'm here for you." Behind them the street cameras flashed. Strangers whispered, some cheered, some cursed, but the poor driver and the billionaire heiress stood shoulder to shoulder in the chaos, their story no longer theirs to hide, and from that moment every step they took would shake the world. The empire tried to Bury them lawyers drafted papers faster than storms crossed oceans. Her father offered him millions to walk away and threats when money failed, but the driver did not bend because he knew one truth. The woman he saved was no longer just a stranger. She was his life. Reporters hounded them. Streets turned hostile. Her name dragged across headlines, but in the quiet moments, away from flashing lights, she laughed again for the first time in years, and he found himself building her a world not of diamonds or steel, but of warmth and honesty. Her father grew desperate, arranging a marriage with a man of power, hoping to seal her fate, but on the night of the engagement she stood in the ballroom, her heart pounding, while the rich applauded, until the doors swung open and the poor driver walked in. His presence silenced the hall. Gasps rose as he crossed the polished floor. No suit, no jewels, only the fire in his eyes and the courage in his stride. She left the groom standing at the altar and went to him, her hand slipping into his before the entire crowd, her whisper breaking the silence, "I choose him." The empire could not hold her anymore. The city could not cage their truth. And when they stepped into the night, hand in hand, the world might have judged them, but they had found the only thing that mattered: love born from survival, unshaken by fear, and stronger than fortune forever.